Right, so in the debate on the State of the Nation address today, Eskom came up over and over again, but let's not forget about SARS. Now, Tom Moyane's the bid to regain the South African Revenue Service's top job, to be the tax boss again, has failed at the Constitutional Court. The court dismissed the case, saying it had no reasonable prospect of success. Former SARS Commissioner Moyane was fired by President Cyril Ramaphosa following Judge Robert Nugent's recommendation last year. Moyane approached the High Court in Pretoria and asked the court to reverse the president's decision. He also wanted the court to prohibit Nugent from delivering his final report to the president. That application was dismissed. He later approached the Constitutional Court, and with this decision, President Ramaphosa can now appoint a new SARS boss. The court decided not to award costs. The decision comes as a process to appoint a new tax boss is already at an advanced stage. Interviews were held over the weekend. To discuss further, we're joined by Tiso Blackstar Group legal journalist Karyn Maughn. Great to have you with us. So seemingly this could be the end of the road, but I see Tom Moyane's lawyers are saying not, in fact.
Well, essentially their argument is we went to court on an urgent basis to stop the appointment of the replacement of Tom Moyane. We wanted the president's decision reversed. But they're arguing that they have a number of substantive challenges to both the Nugent inquiry and to the Azar inquiry into Tom Moyane's fitness that they still need to ventilate in a court. And they intend to proceed with those challenges. You know, we've heard these arguments before. They essentially said that President Ramaphosa should have been the one to give evidence against Moyane in his disciplinary inquiry, that it shouldn't have been Pravin Gordhan, that there should have been oral testimony. They also argued that the Nugent inquiry was a sort of secondary trial, which was unfair to him. So they went, and Michael Katz's presence on the panel of advisors, being as he was, as they described it, President Ramaphosa's personal lawyer, all saying that there were these substantive procedural unfairnesses that rendered the Nugent inquiry deeply suspect, and did the same with the Bum inquiry. Now they're saying they're going to still bring those challenges, and if they're successful, then it will raise real question marks about the dismissal of Tom Moyane. But I think, in all honesty, while they have every right, you know, to constitutionally speaking, to raise those kind of challenges, I would be quite surprised, given what the courts have already sort of found in this matter and the attitude taken by the Constitutional Court, whether in fact that they actually succeed.
And the Constitutional Court judgment does free the president to formally appoint a new tax boss.
Absolutely. There's no legal impediment towards him doing it. I think the fact that there was this kind of appeal in potentially hovering in the wings could have stymied that process. We know that, Tiso Blackstar, the finance minister, has appointed a very, very high-level panel of people to find the replacement for Tom Moyane, which I think, of course, as an economics expert, you would also find very interesting, because we haven't seen that kind of thing happening in the past. You know, we know from the evidence in the state capture inquiry, for example, that when President Jacob Zuma was making the decision around Moyane, there was almost virtually no consultation, and he decided that this individual who was National Commissioner of Correctional Services at that time was really the perfect person to take over.
Well, on that, I mean, it seems President Ramaphosa is doing that pointedly, appointing panels to come up with these senior appointments, so he can't be accused of picking for any personal gain or because of a personal relationship.
But it goes beyond that, Francis, because what we've seen in the past was, former President Jacob Zuma taken to court over Sean Abrams, taken to court over Menzi Simelane, where, there was a real challenge to his appointment of Menzi Simelane, for instance, as NDPP, and, his very, misspelt CV coming into the public domain, and real questions about the rationality and legality of that decision. And of course, there was no panel. It was simply the president's discretion, which he is given under the Constitution. He does have this incredible executive power. We see President Ramaphosa moving substantively away from that. When it came to the NDPP, he appoints a high-level panel, and people who are actually experts in the area. We've seen that with the SARS commissioner as well. Obviously, he wasn't responsible for that appointment. It was Tiso Blackstar, but a similar kind of culture. The people on this panel, like Angela Bester, like Judge Dennis Davis, and many others, are all experts within the area of finances that are very explicitly within the domain of the SARS commissioner.
Are there strong names in the hat right now for the next tax boss?
At this point, we haven't heard, I think people within the know, but we haven't heard, real clinical analysis of who it might be. Mark Kingon has done a fairly good job in that position, but there may be a feeling that they want to bring in completely new blood. But I think definitively they're going to want to get someone in who is an absolute expert within the ambit of tax, within the challenges that SARS faces, will look at the restructuring that was done under Moyane and look at ways in which it can be addressed. We've seen, untold, levels of tax non-compliance starting to happen because of this lack of public faith in the integrity of the institution. I think anyone would argue that. And I think it's pretty crucial that normal taxpayers believe that this is an institution that is fair to everyone and is doing its job and is going after people that are not paying the taxes that are due.
So Tom Moyane has been accused of undermining that credibility. Just take us back and remind us about some of the claims that led to the Nugent Commission that led to the president firing Moyane.
Well, it was interesting because there was obviously two simultaneous processes going on. There was Nugent, which was really looking at this issue of tax administration. And this what was so interesting was it was actually initiated by Malusi Gigaba, because there was this kind of rising tide of panic about people not necessarily paying the tax that they should be, non-compliance. And when we remember that SARS was literally one of the most profoundly functional institutions within government, it was recognized internationally under the leadership of Pravin Gordhan for achieving these high levels of compliance, for its high levels of functionality. Of course, Tom Moyane came in and said that under his leadership, he was the most successful SARS commissioner, that he had got incredibly high levels of revenue for the revenue service. And of course, the Nugent inquiry very much challenging those perceptions, looking at, for instance, the restructuring of SARS, the closing down of specific units that were designed to investigate issues of non-compliance, and particularly within the corporate, the business units, those kind of things. And this kind of ethos of very specific individuals being taken out of that body for specific reasons. And I think what's very interesting is I spoke to Mark Kingon last year, where he was trying very much to present a brave face and speak about his role in the management of SARS and possible positive changes. But many of the people that were serving under Moyane on the ExCo are still there. And I think the bigger question, not just in terms of who is the new commissioner going to be, but who is the ExCo going to be? Are we going to see a kind of shake-up of that executive committee where we're going to get support, for the new leadership? Because it's about the institution as the whole. It's like expecting Shamila Batoy to magically transform the NPA.
It's exactly the same as the NPA. And if there has been the brain drain, those technical skills in the past, the people you're speaking to, how bad is it, according to them, because this institution then has to be restored?
There's a huge parallel between the NPA and SARS, and issues of morale and issues, it doesn't take a lot to destroy an institution when people who are doing their jobs are undermined, and those who aren't are sort of plummeted to high levels and put in positions. And that was the evidence, for instance, in the NPA inquiry on the version of a number of the witnesses, that people were wholly unsuited for position, were put in them where they had enormous amount of power and could really frustrate and stymie very crucial investigations. And similar evidence laid about SARS. Tom Moyane has a very different take on all of those aspects, but ultimately, of course, the Nugent inquiry, at least in its provisional report to President Ramaphosa, painting a very devastating picture of SARS under his leadership. And we know that, for instance, President Ramaphosa in his first address to the nation, identifying leadership issues in SARS and the NPA as one of his pivotal priorities. So it's about the executive supporting those kind of changes of leadership, but also supporting those leaders in bringing the positive restructuring that they need to do to ensure that there is a kind of support base for them, and that the people, that it becomes an environment where you can bring those skills back into that environment and you can get that support.
All right, thank you for your analysis as always, Karyn Maughn. So Tom Moyane says he will continue the fight, but we could see the announcement of a new tax boss soon. That was